At 2:17 in the morning, a woman I barely knew opened my bedroom door, walked straight across the room, and climbed into my bed as if she had done it 100 times. I did not move at first. That was not fear. Fear makes noise. Fear knocks over a lamp, grabs for a weapon, shouts a name it barely remembers. What kept me still was training. 10 years as a firefighter teaches a man to wake up fast and decide slowly. Some mistakes are made because you panic. The worst ones are made because you want a simple answer before the room has finished telling you what is wrong. The room was black except for the thin orange strip of streetlight cutting through the blinds. Rain tapped against the window screen. My old radiator clicked in the corner like a tired insect. I could smell wet wool, expensive shampoo, and the faint metallic edge of fear. The woman beside me was shivering. Her name, as far as I knew, was Mara Lane. She had moved into my spare room 11 days earlier with 2 suitcases, a laptop she never let out of sight, and 3 months' rent paid in cash. She had looked too polished for my building and too exhausted for her age. Maybe 30, maybe a little older. Good coat, bad sleep, careful eyes. She said she did contract work downtown and needed a quiet place for a few weeks. I had needed the money badly enough not to ask too many questions. Now she had one hand fisted in the front of my t-shirt and her cheek pressed against my shoulder. Her eyes were open. They reflected the streetlight without focusing on it. "Don't sign it," she whispered. I kept my voice low. "Mara, you're in my room." She did not hear me. "The south stairwell will go first," she said. "Tell him the inspection was forged. Tell Dad not to sign it." That got my attention. The south stairwell. I had heard that phrase before, not in a dream and not from a woman in my bed. I had heard it in a maintenance report for the Langford building, 6 months before my employer fired me for refusing to keep my mouth shut. Mara's fingers tightened in my shirt. "They turned the alarms off," she breathed. "I saw them. I saw them turn everything off." I sat up carefully. She came with me, limp and trembling, like her bones had forgotten their own instructions. If she was awake, she was terrified. If she was asleep, she was somewhere worse. "Listen to me," I said. "You are safe. There is no fire. There is no stairwell. You're in my apartment." Her breathing hitched. I eased one foot to the floor and switched on the small lamp beside the bed. Warm light spread across the room, soft enough not to slap her awake. She looked younger in it. Not innocent. I had seen enough people at the edge of disaster to know innocence and helplessness were not the same thing. She looked like a woman who had spent years keeping her hands steady in public and had finally run out of strength in private. I guided her up by the shoulders, gentle but firm. "Come on, back to your room." She came without arguing. In the hall, her bare foot hit the loose board outside the bathroom, the one I kept meaning to fix. It gave a long wooden groan. She flinched so hard her shoulder struck my ribs. "It's just the floor," I said. "Old building. Nothing more." She looked at me then, almost looked at me and whispered, "Noah?" My name in her mouth stopped me for half a second. I had introduced myself on move-in day. I had fixed the kitchen faucet while she stood in the doorway pretending not to watch. We had exchanged maybe 40 sentences total. Hearing my name from her while she was caught between sleep and whatever memory had dragged her down the hall felt wrong in a way I could not explain. "Yeah," I said, "it's Noah. You're safe." Her room was neat enough to be suspicious. No pictures, no books, no cheap makeup scattered over the dresser, no half-empty coffee cups or receipts or the normal debris of a person living somewhere. Her suitcase stood zipped beside the closet. Her shoes were lined up under the window. The only mess was on the desk. A stack of printed documents, a notebook filled with tight handwriting, and an old brass key on a red string. I did not read the papers. I am not a saint, but there are lines a man should not cross, especially at 2 in the morning with a woman who had not chosen to walk into his room. I sat her on the edge of the bed and pulled the blanket over her knees. Her hand caught my wrist. "If I disappear," she whispered, "don't let Adrian take the files." The name meant nothing to me then. By the next evening, it would mean plenty. I waited until her grip loosened, then placed her hand on the blanket and stepped back. She was asleep before I reached the door. I stood in the hall for a long time after I closed it. Rain ran down the window at the end of the corridor. The radiator hissed. Somewhere below me, Mrs. Alvarez's television murmured in Spanish. Nothing had changed, except everything had. A woman who paid cash for my spare room had just walked into my bed and spoken about a forged inspection report connected to the job that had cost me my career. That was not a roommate problem. That was a warning. I did not sleep again. At 6:10, I was in the kitchen with coffee black enough to patch asphalt, sitting across from a table I had cleared the night before. I had expected Mara to stay hidden. People with secrets usually let daylight do their apologizing for them. At 6:18, her bedroom door opened. She stepped into the kitchen wearing black slacks, a white shirt buttoned to the throat, and the expression of someone walking into a courtroom. Her hair was tied back. Her face was pale. She glanced at my door, then at me, then at the coffee. "I came into your room," she said. Not a question. "Yes." Her jaw tightened. "Did I hurt you?" That was not the first thing most people would ask. Most people would ask what they said. She asked if she had hurt me. No. Did I say anything? I pushed a mug toward the chair across from me. "You want coffee before I answer that?" "I want the answer." "Fair enough. You said not to sign something. You mentioned a south stairwell. You said the inspection was forged. You said someone named Adrian should not get the files." The color drained from her face so completely I almost stood up. She lowered herself into the chair, but she did not touch the mug. "You should forget that." "I probably should." She looked at me sharply. "But I won't," I said, "because I lost my job over a forged inspection report on a south stairwell. So you can tell me this is coincidence and I will listen. I won't believe you, but I will listen." Her hand went to her throat, not in a dramatic way, more like she was checking whether she could still breathe. "Where did you work?" she asked. "Rourke Building Services, contracted through Whitaker Urban Holdings." That name hit her like a slap. She closed her eyes for one beat too long. When she opened them, something in her had changed. The woman who sat across from me was not the nervous contractor from my spare room. She was colder, cleaner, more practiced. A mask lowered into place so fast I almost admired it. "I can't discuss Whitaker Holdings," she said. "Didn't ask you to." "I mean it." "So do I." We sat there with the coffee cooling between us. The rain had stopped outside, leaving the alley slick and bright. A garbage truck backed up below my window with 3 ugly beeps. Mara flinched on the second one and hit it on the third. I noticed. She noticed me noticing. "I have a sleep disorder," she said at last. "Stress makes it worse. I had an episode. It won't happen again." "It happened because of a forged inspection?" "It happened because I was tired." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." There was the high-born voice. Not an accent exactly, but a tone. People who have never waited for a late paycheck speak differently when cornered. They expect the room to bend around them. I stood and rinsed my mug. "Fine. Then I have one rule. If you sleepwalk, I get you back to your room. That's all. I don't touch your papers, I don't ask questions at 3 in the morning, and I don't let you walk out the front door into traffic." For the first time since she entered, her face softened. "Why?" "Why what?" "Why would you help me after what I said?" I dried the mug and put it on the rack, because I know what it looks like when someone wakes up inside a nightmare. She stared at me as if I had spoken in a language she had forgotten she knew. Then my phone rang. Rourke Building Services flashed on the screen. I had not worked there in 6 months, but when a bad company calls a fired man at breakfast, it is never to apologize. I answered. "Cole," said Dennis Rourke, my old supervisor. His voice still sounded like smoke in a cheap bar. "You home?" "Depends who is asking." "Don't get cute. A woman came sniffing around our records yesterday. Pretty, dark hair, expensive shoes, asking about Langford. You know anything? I looked at Mara. Her eyes were on mine, unblinking. No, I said. You sure? Because if you're feeding documents to some lawyer, you better remember that you signed an exit agreement. I signed a termination form after you fired me for writing the truth. Careful. You first. A long pause. Then Rourke lowered his voice. The people above me are nervous, Noah. Nervous people do stupid things. If that woman contacts you, send her away. If she is in your apartment, put her outside. Mara went very still. I don't take orders from you anymore, I said. Then take advice. That woman is trouble in a silk blouse. Men with deeper pockets than yours are looking for her. You don't want to be standing next to her when they arrive. He hung up. I kept the phone at my ear for a second, after the line went dead. Mara rose from the chair slowly. I have to leave. Sit down. Noah, you do not understand. I understand my old boss just warned me to throw you out. I understand you know something about the report that got me fired. I understand you are scared enough to pay rent in cash and sleep with your door locked. Sit down. Her chin lifted. You don't get to command me. I am not commanding you. I am reminding you that if you run every time someone threatens you, eventually you will run into the person who set the trap. That landed. She looked toward the front door, then at the hall, then back at me. They'll come here, she said. Let them. You say that because you think this is about a bad inspection. Then tell me what it is really about. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then the buzzer downstairs screamed. Once, twice, 3 times. Not a visitor, a demand. Mara's body turned to stone. The intercom crackled before I touched it. Mara, a man's voice said, smooth enough to sell poison as medicine. Open the door. We need to talk before this becomes embarrassing. She closed her eyes. Adrian, she whispered. I pressed the talk button. Wrong apartment. A short silence. Who is this? The man who pays the electric bill. Put Mara on. No. Mara stared at me. The voice downstairs changed. The polish remained, but something hard showed underneath it. Do you know who you're speaking to? No. Then you're already out of your depth. Maybe. Still not opening the door. I released the button. The buzzer screamed again. Mara grabbed her bag from the chair. You shouldn't have done that. Probably not. Adrian Blackwell does not go away because someone says no. Most men like that don't. He can ruin you. I almost laughed. Lady, I live in a 3rd-floor walk-up with a radiator older than my father. The ruined ship sailed. That pulled the smallest sound from her, not quite a laugh, more like surprise escaping before she could stop it. Then heavy footsteps started up the stairs. Not 1 man. 3. I crossed the kitchen and took the old fire axe from the wall by the back door. It was decorative now, mostly. The blade was dull, the handle worn smooth. It had belonged to my captain, and I kept it because a man sometimes needs to remember who he was before people told him to become smaller. Mara's eyes widened. You are not going to hit anyone with that. Depends how they enter. The footsteps stopped outside my door. A knock came, 3 measured taps. I opened it with the chain on. The man in the hallway looked like money had been poured into a suit and taught to smile. Mid-30s, gold watch, perfect hair, perfect teeth, eyes dead as tinted glass. Behind him stood 2 private security types trying very hard to look like assistants. Adrian Blackwell glanced at the chain, then at me. Mr. Cole, I assume. I did not ask how he knew my name. Mr. Blackwell, I assume. His smile did not move. Mara is unwell. Her family asked me to bring her home. She is an adult. An adult under severe emotional strain. Still an adult. His gaze shifted past me. Mara, sweetheart, don't make this public. The word sweetheart made her flinch. I stepped wider, blocking his view. She doesn't want to talk to you. Adrian looked back at me, and the smile finally cooled. You have known her less than 2 weeks. I have known her since we were children. Then you should have learned how to hear no by now. One of the security men moved. Not much. Enough. I lifted the axe handle against the doorframe. Try the lock, I said, and the first thing I do is call the police. The second thing I do is live stream you standing in a working man's hallway trying to drag a woman out of her apartment. Adrian's eyes narrowed. For the first time, I saw him calculate me, not fear. Men like him do not fear men like me. They measure cost. A lawsuit, a clip online, a delay, a stain on clean shoes. This is a mistake, he said. I make those daily. He leaned closer to the gap. Mara, listen carefully. The emergency board session has been moved to Friday. If you are not present, your proxy will be activated. If you appear in this condition, the psychiatric clause will be triggered. Either way, you lose. Come with me now, and I can still protect you. Mara's voice came from behind me, low and steady. You mean control me? His expression flickered. You need control, he said gently. That has always been your problem. Too much grief, too much guilt, too many little crusades. You were never built to carry Whitaker. Your father knew that. The air changed. Mara moved before I could stop her. She came to the door, not close enough for him to reach, but close enough for him to see her face. Do not talk about my father in this building, she said. Adrian smiled again, because cruelty is easiest when it can dress as concern. Then come home. No. The word was quiet. It was also final. Adrian looked at me. You have no idea what she is dragging you into. I am starting to get the shape of it. Then get this shape. He slipped a card through the gap in the door. It fell to the floor between my boots. My office will buy out your lease, pay your debts, and find you a better job than the one you lost. All you have to do is be sensible for once in your life. I looked down at the card. Then I opened the door as far as the chain allowed, bent slowly, picked it up, and tore it in half. Adrian's smile vanished. She is not for sale, I said. Behind me, Mara made a sound so small that nobody else would have heard it. But I did. Adrian stepped back. Friday, then. He turned and walked away with his men following. When the stairwell door closed below, Mara slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor. Her hands shook so badly she had to grip them together. I told you, she whispered. You should have let me leave. I put the axe back on the wall. Who are you? She stared at the floor. My name isn't Mara Lane. I guessed that part. Her laugh was bitter and empty. My legal name is Marin Whitaker. I knew the name. Everyone in the city knew the name. Whitaker Urban Holdings owned half the apartment towers, office blocks, parking garages, senior homes, and strip malls between the river and the airport. They sponsored charity galas and mayoral campaigns. They put their logo on youth centers while their contractors patched boilers with lies and paint. Marin Whitaker was the missing daughter, the heiress, the woman the business pages described as brilliant, unstable, private, ruthless, grieving, spoiled, depending on which columnist owed money to whom. The company that had fired me belonged to her family. I felt something inside me shut. Get up, I said. She looked at me. Noah. Get up. She rose slowly. I stepped back, giving her the hall. Pack your things. Her face went still in the worst way. You want me out. I want the truth. But if the truth is that you came here because you knew who I was, if you used my apartment because I was connected to Langford, then yes, I want you out." She swallowed. "I knew your name after I rented the room, not before." "Convenient." "I am not lying. Your company ruined me. It ruined my father, too." That stopped me. She gripped the back of the kitchen chair. "The Langford report was part of a larger cover-up. My father found it before he died. He was going to suspend 3 executive contracts and turn the internal files over to the city. That night he went to the south stairwell to see the repairs himself. The emergency lights failed. The fall killed him. They called it a heart event. They sealed the floor before the medical examiner arrived." I said nothing. "Adrian helped seal it," she said. "Dennis Rourke helped bury it. The board made me sign a continuity agreement while I was drugged on grief and sedatives. I spent a year as the face of a company I did not control. Every time I asked for the old files, another doctor appeared. Another article questioned my stability. Another lawyer reminded me that a mentally unfit CEO could be removed." Her voice cracked, but she forced it level again. "So I left the penthouse. I changed my name. I started looking from the bottom. Contractor records, tenants, service calls, people they thought were too poor to matter. That is how I found your termination file. You wrote the truth. They fired you for it." Anger is easy when it has one target. Mine did not anymore. I wanted to hate her. It would have been clean. Rich woman, bad company, dead father, fired employee, simple story. But there was nothing simple about the woman standing in my kitchen with bare feet and a billionaire's last name, trying not to shake apart because a man in a suit had called her weak. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because men like Adrian survive by turning truth into leverage. If I told you everything, you became a target. If I told you nothing, you had a chance to stay out of it." That choice was mine. "I know," she said. "I keep taking choices from people because mine were taken from me. I hate that I do it. I still do it." That was the first honest thing she had said that morning without armor around it. I looked at the rain-streaked window. The city outside was waking up, unaware that the woman everyone thought slept above marble floors had spent the night in my old apartment, whispering evidence into my shirt. "Friday," I said. "What happens Friday?" She breathed out. "The board votes on emergency authority. Adrian will present medical statements, edited security footage, and testimony from my private physician. He will argue I am a danger to myself and the company. If he wins, my shares go into temporary proxy. He controls the proxy. And if you show up with proof? Then I need enough to force an independent audit before they vote. I don't have enough." "What do you have?" She hesitated. I smiled without warmth. "Still choosing for me?" Her chin lowered. "My father's notebook," she said. "1 partial email chain. 3 altered maintenance logs. Your termination file. A list of tenants who filed complaints before the Langford accident." "What do you need?" "The original inspection photos from the south stairwell, the unaltered alarm service record, the name of whoever shut off the emergency lights." I thought of Rourke's back office. I thought of the archive room behind the parts cage, where old paper records sat in banker boxes because the company was too cheap to digitize anything that could not invoice rent. I thought of a gray metal cabinet with a lock so bad I had fixed it twice. "I know where the paper copies might be," I said. Marin looked up. Hope is dangerous on a face that has been starving. "No," she said immediately. "Absolutely not." That was fast. "You are not breaking into your old workplace for me. I still have a key." That is worse. Technically, it is efficient. Noah. I had never liked hearing my name used as a warning. From her, it almost worked. "You said they took choices from you," I said. "Do not take this one from me." She looked at me for a long time. Then she sat down at the kitchen table and covered her face with both hands. "I am so tired," she whispered. The words had no strategy in them. No heiress, no CEO, just a woman at the end of herself. I crossed the kitchen, poured coffee into the mug she had never touched, and set it beside her elbow. "Drink," I said. "Then we plan." By noon, my apartment looked like a war room built by people who could not afford a war. Marin spread documents across the kitchen table. I brought out the old building maps I had kept from my work days, not because I was sentimental, but because I had learned never to trust employers who called evidence company property. We used dry erase markers on the refrigerator, sticky notes on the cabinets, and the back of a pizza box when we ran out of space. The strange thing was how good we were together once we stopped lying. She saw patterns. I saw systems. She could read a corporate memo and tell which paragraph had been written by a lawyer who wanted deniability. I could look at a service order and tell which repair had been done, which had been faked, and which had been paid for twice because someone skimmed the difference. At 4, Mrs. Alvarez knocked with a pot of stew because she said we looked too thin through the window. Marin answered the door by mistake. Mrs. Alvarez looked her up and down, saw the table covered in papers, saw me behind her with a marker in my mouth and a toolbox in my hand, and smiled like she had just caught me bringing home a duchess. "You are the new girl," she said. Marin froze. "Roommate," I said quickly. Mrs. Alvarez's smile widened. "Sure, eat before you both die." She shoved the pot into Marin's hands and left. For the first time since Adrian walked away, Marin laughed. It was not graceful. It came out rusty and surprised, like a door opening in a house nobody had lived in for years. "She thinks I'm your girlfriend," Marin said. "She thinks every woman under 60 is either my girlfriend or my future wife. Saves time." Marin carried the stew to the stove. "And are there many candidates?" I looked at her. She looked at the pot very hard. "No," I said. That was all. One word, but it changed the room anyway. We ate at the table between stacks of evidence. She held the spoon like she had forgotten what normal food tasted like. Halfway through, she closed her eyes. "This is better than anything my chef ever made," she said. "Don't let Mrs. Alvarez hear you call her a chef. She will start charging." Marin smiled into the bowl. At 7, I called an old friend named Vince, who still worked nights at Rourke. He owed me from a time I had pulled him out of a smoke-filled laundry room when he ignored an evacuation order to save his brother's dog. "I need to get into the archive," I told him. "Noah," he said, "every sentence that starts like that ends with me losing my pension." "You don't have a pension." "That is not the point." I gave him the short version. He cursed for a full minute. Then he said, "Back door after midnight, 15 minutes. If I see cameras, I am a ghost, and you never met me." Marin stood by the sink listening. When I hung up, she said, "I should go." "No. You don't know the file names. You can write them down." "Noah, I have spent a year letting other people act while I hide in safe rooms and legal offices. I am done hiding. This is not a speech. It is a burglary. It is my company. It is a building full of cameras and men who answer to Adrian. Then we go together." The argument lasted 11 minutes and ended because she put on my spare black hoodie and looked so determined I knew anything I said would only make her more stubborn. At 12:13 a.m., we crossed the alley behind Rourke Building Services in the rain. Marin moved badly in the dark, not clumsy. Too alert. She watched every shadow, every parked car, every reflection in the wet pavement. Trauma makes the whole world a doorway someone could step through. "Stay close," I said. "I am." "Closer." She looked at me, then moved near enough that her shoulder brushed my arm. The back door opened before I knocked. Vince stood there in a security jacket 3 sizes too large, holding a flashlight and wearing the expression of a man already regretting his morality. "You have 15 minutes, he said, "and you did not bring a billionaire into my workplace." Marin blinked. Vince pointed at her. Hat lower, Your Majesty. Cameras are old, not blind. She pulled the hood lower. I almost smiled. The archive room smelled like dust, damp cardboard, and decades of small lies. Vince stayed at the hall while I went straight to the metal cabinet behind the old inspection shelves. The lock was the same, cheap brass, proud of nothing. I opened it in under 30 seconds. Marin stared. Maintenance, I said. We fix things. Sometimes we fix access. She shook her head. I am pretending I did not hear that. We found the Langford boxes on the bottom shelf. The labels had been changed, but paper has habits. The newest sticker sat crooked over older adhesive. I peeled it back with my thumbnail and saw the original job number. Marin inhaled sharply. Inside were maintenance logs, old printed emails, invoice copies, and photo sleeves. She sorted with ruthless speed. I watched the door and listened to Vince coughing too loudly in the hall. Here, she whispered. She held up a photo. The south stairwell emergency light panel, open. The bypass switch had been taped down. Under the tape was a handwritten service tag with a technician number. I knew the number. Rourke, I said. Marin's hand shook. Dennis Rourke himself? Yes. We kept going. The second piece was better. A paper alarm record showing the emergency circuit had been disabled for 46 minutes the night her father died. The digital version I had seen months later said 4 minutes. The third was the knife. An internal email printed by mistake from Adrian Blackwell to Dennis Rourke. Keep the stairwell quiet until W signs. No city inspectors. We cannot delay the acquisition again. V. Whitaker. Her father. Marin stared at the page so long I touched her elbow. We have to go. She did not move. Marin. Her eyes were wet, but no tears fell. He knew. Adrian knew Dad was going there. Footsteps sounded in the hall. Not Vince. Vince cursed once, softly. Noah. Company. I shoved the papers under my jacket. Marin grabbed the photo sleeves. The hallway filled with voices. Archive lights are on, someone said. Marin looked at me. I pointed to the utility closet at the back of the room. It connected through a crawl space to the old boiler hall. At least it used to. You first, I whispered. No. Not now. She went. I followed, pulling the closet door shut as the archive door opened behind us. The crawl space was narrow, dusty, and dark enough to make the air feel solid. Marin crawled ahead of me, breathing too fast. I could hear men moving in the archive, opening cabinets, kicking boxes. I can't, she whispered. The crawl space tightened near the old pipe chase. A bad place for panic, a terrible place for memory. Yes, you can, I said. 6 more feet than left. Noah. Look at my hand. I reached forward. She grabbed my fingers. Breathe with me, I said. She tried. Her breath hitched once, twice, then steadied enough to move. We dropped into the boiler hall behind a dead water heater and went out through the old delivery hatch into the alley. Rain hit my face like a slap. Vince came through the back door 30 seconds later, breathing hard. You two are insane, he said. Probably, I said. Marin held up the photo sleeve. Thank you. Vince looked at her, really looked, and some of the sarcasm left him. Make it hurt, he said. Whatever you're doing, make it hurt. We ran. Back at the apartment, Marin spread the papers on my bed because the kitchen window faced the street, and she no longer trusted it. Her hands had stopped shaking, but that worried me more. Calm after shock can be a thin cover over a hole. This is enough, she said. This is enough to delay the vote, maybe enough to open criminal exposure. Good. She did not look up. Noah. Yeah. I need to say something before Friday because after Friday I may not get the chance. I leaned against the dresser. She kept her eyes on the papers. I did not come here looking for you, but once I found your file, I wanted to know the man who wrote that report. The wording was so plain. No politics, no fear. Just a sentence that said the stairwell was unsafe and people would die if repairs were not made. I had read 1,000 documents by then. Yours was the first one that sounded like a person still believed people mattered. That hit harder than I wanted it to. She looked up finally. You asked if I used you. I used your report. I used your courage. I used the fact that you had already told the truth once when it cost you. But I did not fake what happened here. I did not fake trusting you. I did not fake walking to your door in my sleep because some part of me believed you were safer than any locked room Adrian bought for me. The rain worked at the window behind her. I had no clean answer. Men like me are not taught what to do when powerful women strip themselves down to honesty and stand there waiting to see whether you will make them regret it. So I said the only thing I could. I am still angry. She nodded. But I believe you. Her shoulders lowered as if she had been holding up a ceiling. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. Friday is tomorrow. Today, she corrected. I looked at the clock. 2:17 a.m. Of course. We both saw it. A ridiculous little laugh escaped her, and then mine followed. Not because anything was funny, but because the hour had become a curse, a password, a door we kept walking through. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of my hoodie. I should sleep, she said. You should. She glanced toward the hall. I understood before she asked. You can take my room, I said. I'll sleep on the couch. That is not what I meant. The room went still. She looked embarrassed, but she did not look away. I am not sleepwalking, she said. I am awake. I am asking if I can stay here, not because I don't know where I am, because I do. There are moments when a man's character is not tested by what he wants, but by what he does with wanting it. I wanted her to stay. I wanted it so badly I had to breathe before answering. Yes, I said, but we sleep, nothing else. She gave a tired smile. You say that like I have energy for anything else. I pulled the spare blanket over the bed and kept space between us. She lay on her side, facing the window. I lay on mine, facing the door because old habits don't retire just because the room gets softer. After a minute, her hand found mine under the blanket. Is this okay? She asked. Yes. Her fingers were cold. I held them until her breathing slowed. For the first time since she had moved in, Marin slept through the rest of the night. The emergency board meeting was held on the 42nd floor of Whitaker Tower, in a room designed to make people feel small. The table was black glass, the chairs were white leather, the windows looked down on the river, the bridges, and the neighborhoods whose rent paid for that view. I wore my only suit. It was dark blue, 6 years old, and too tight in the shoulders. Marin wore a charcoal dress, a plain coat, and no jewelry except the brass key on the red string around her wrist. In the lobby, everyone stared. Some recognized her and pretended not to. Some recognized me from the termination file and did not bother pretending. Security hesitated when I stepped toward the elevators. Marin stopped walking. He is with me, she said. The guard looked at Adrian Blackwell, who waited near the private elevator with a smile already prepared. Miss Whitaker, Adrian said, this meeting is restricted. Then stop speaking in the lobby. A receptionist coughed. Someone behind us whispered into a phone. Adrian's smile tightened. You look better than expected. You look exactly as expected. That time I almost laughed. His eyes slid to me. Mr. Cole, I hope you understand you are being used. People keep telling me that. Because it is obvious. To people who use people, I imagine everything looks like use. Adrian's face hardened for half a second. Marin touched my sleeve, not to restrain me, to remind me she could answer for herself. Enough, she said. Take us up. The elevator ride lasted 42 floors and felt longer than some fire calls I had survived. Adrian stood on one side. Marin stood on the other. I stood half a step behind her because this was her fight, not because I was hiding. At the top, the boardroom doors opened. 12 directors sat around the black glass table. Lawyers lined the walls. A gray-haired doctor I did not trust stood near the screen with a leather folder under one arm. At the head of the table was an empty chair, Marin's chair. A woman with silver glasses spoke first. Ms. Whitaker, before we begin, the board needs to determine whether you are medically fit to participate. Marin walked to the head of the table and remained standing. No, she said. The room paused. The woman blinked. Excuse me? No, you will not determine my fitness before I am allowed to speak. You will hear my statement, enter my evidence into record, and then decide whether you still wish to remove me on the advice of a physician paid by my fiancé. Adrian sighed softly. Marin. She did not look at him. Mr. Blackwell. The formality landed like a slap. He spread his hands. This hostility is exactly why we are concerned. You disappeared for weeks. You were found living in an unsafe neighborhood under a false name. You have documented parasomnia episodes, grief instability, and a pattern of reckless decisions. You brought a former maintenance employee with a grievance into a confidential board session. His eyes moved to me. This is not courage, it is collapse. A few directors looked away. He had prepared them well. Marin placed both hands on the table. Are you finished? I am trying to protect you. No, you are trying to finish what you started the night my father died. The room changed shape. Adrian's face did not move, but his eyes did. The doctor shifted. One lawyer leaned toward another. Marin opened the folder I had carried under my coat and placed 3 pieces of paper on the table. Not 20, not a flood, 3. She had chosen them before dawn with the precision of a surgeon. Item 1, she said. Original alarm service record from Langford Tower, South Stairwell, printed before digital alteration. The emergency circuit was disabled for 46 minutes on the night William Whitaker died. The official record entered into company files says 4 minutes. She slid the paper to the silver glasses director. Item 2. Inspection photograph showing the bypass switch taped down under a service tag belonging to Dennis Rourke. That bypass does not happen by accident. The paper moved. Item 3. Email from Adrian Blackwell to Dennis Rourke instructing him to keep the stairwell quiet until W signs. No city inspectors. We cannot delay the acquisition again. This time she did not slide the paper. She held it up. W was my father. Silence. Adrian smiled sadly, as if she had disappointed him by becoming hysterical exactly on schedule. Marin, he said, those documents were stolen. Their chain of custody is worthless. You walked into this room with a fired repairman and a stack of paper from a contractor archive. You cannot possibly expect the board to accept. I expect the board to preserve them, she said, because copies have already been sent to the city attorney, the fire marshal, and 3 newspapers. That was not true. Not yet. It was also not entirely false. Vince had the scans ready. Mrs. Alvarez's grandson, who apparently knew more about encrypted uploads than any teenager should, had scheduled the release for noon if we did not send the stop code. Adrian did not know that. For the first time, his confidence cracked. The silver glasses director lifted the alarm record and studied it. Where did you get these? From a cabinet your auditors missed because it was stored below unpaid invoice boxes, Marin said. Poor people keep receipts. Rich men forget paper exists. I looked at the floor so no one saw my smile. The doctor cleared his throat. Miss Whitaker, even if there are governance questions, they do not negate the psychiatric concerns. You have had episodes of sleepwalking, dissociation, and emotional volatility. Mr. Blackwell provided footage from a private hallway camera showing you entering Mr. Cole's bedroom at night in a confused state. My blood went cold. Marin's face went white. Adrian's smile returned. There it was, the dirty piece. Not a medical concern. Humiliation. A director shifted uncomfortably. Footage? Adrian gave the doctor a small nod. The screen at the end of the room lit up. Black and white video played. My hallway, my door. Marin in my borrowed shirt, barefoot and lost, walking into my room at 2:17 a.m. The room watched a private wound become public property. Marin stood very still. I stepped forward. She lifted one hand without looking at me. Stop. So I stopped. Adrian spoke gently. This is why we are here. Marin needs care, not control of a multi-billion-dollar company. She is vulnerable to manipulation by men who appear protective while gaining access to her assets and privileged information. Every eye came to me. There are insults that make a man want to swing. That one made me want to be useful. Marin turned away from the screen and faced the table. That footage was taken from a private apartment hallway, she said, without consent, distributed to this room by a man who claims concern for my dignity. I have a sleep disorder. I have grief. I have fear. None of those things make me incompetent. They make me human. Her voice trembled once. Then it steadied. The man in that room did not touch me without permission. He did not sell the footage. He did not call a tabloid. He did not use my worst night to take my power. Adrian did. If the board is looking for evidence of dangerous judgment, start there. The Silver Glasses director looked at Adrian. He had miscalculated the room. Cruelty works best when everyone can pretend not to see it. The video had made them see. Marin continued. Mr. Cole is here because he wrote the original safety report your contractors buried. He warned that the south stairwell was unsafe. He was fired for telling the truth. If this company had listened to a maintenance worker instead of executives protecting an acquisition, my father might still be alive. She finally looked at me. Not for approval, not for rescue. For partnership. I stepped beside her. My report is real, I said. My termination was retaliation. The building was unsafe. I said it then. I am saying it now. And if anyone in this room thinks a man's paycheck decides whether truth counts, that is why your buildings are dangerous. No one spoke. Adrian tried one last time. This is theater, he said. You cannot run Whitaker on accusations and feelings. Marin reached into the folder and pulled out the brass key on its red string. This was my father's archive key, she said. He gave it to me when I was 21 and told me every empire rots from the locked rooms downward. I spent years thinking leadership meant sitting above everyone. I was wrong. It means knowing what happens in the stairwells, boiler rooms, service halls, and apartments, where people live with the consequences of our signatures. She placed the key on the table. I am calling for an immediate independent investigation into William Whitaker's death, Langford Towers maintenance fraud, and all contractor safety records from the last 7 years. I am also moving to suspend Adrian Blackwell from all advisory and proxy authority pending that investigation. Anyone who votes against that motion should assume their name will appear beside his in the noon release. The room erupted. Lawyers objected. Directors spoke over one another. Adrian demanded order as if the room still belonged to him. It did not. The vote took 40 minutes. Marin won by 1. Sometimes justice enters like thunder. Sometimes it squeezes through a door by a single raised hand from a nervous director who realizes the ship is sinking and wants to be seen near a lifeboat. Adrian was escorted out by the same security division he had probably used for years to frighten tenants and employees. At the door, he stopped and looked back at Marin. You think he loves you? He asked, nodding toward me. Men like him love the rescue. They get bored when the woman no longer needs saving. Marin's face changed. Not anger, peace. Then it is lucky, she said, that I saved myself. He had no answer for that. When he was gone, the room felt bigger. Marin turned to me, and for 1 second I saw the cost of the last hour land on her shoulders. Her knees softened. I caught her elbow. She whispered, "Not here." So I walked beside her, not holding her up, just close enough that if the floor tilted, she would not hit it alone. Outside Whitaker Tower, reporters had already gathered. Someone had leaked the meeting. Maybe Adrian, maybe one of the directors, maybe Mrs. Alvarez's grandson, though I chose not to ask. Cameras swung toward us. "Miss Whitaker, are you stepping down? Is Adrian Blackwell under investigation? Who is the man with you?" Marin stopped at the top of the steps. I expected her to keep walking. Any lawyer would have told her to keep walking. Instead, she faced the cameras. "My name is Marin Whitaker," she said. "This morning, I presented evidence to the board that serious safety records were altered after my father's death and after warnings from workers were ignored. There will be an independent investigation. All tenants in Whitaker-owned buildings will receive a public safety review schedule within 72 hours. Any employee or contractor who was punished for reporting hazards will have a direct channel to the investigation team." A reporter shouted, "What about the claim that you are medically unfit?" Her hand tightened once at her side. Then she answered, "I have a sleep disorder made worse by grief and stress. I am receiving care. That is not shameful. What is shameful is using private medical information to silence a woman asking why people died in buildings we owned." The cameras flashed. Another reporter pointed at me. "And him? Is he your boyfriend? A source says you were living with him under a false name." Marin glanced at me. I braced for a corporate answer. Friend, consultant, former employee, no comment. She gave them none of that. "He is the man who told the truth before anyone with power wanted to hear it," she said. "He is also the man who protected me when I had nothing to offer him except trouble. What else he is to me is not for sale to cameras." Then she walked down the steps. I followed her through the shouted questions, feeling the world tilt into something new. The next 3 months were ugly. People like Adrian do not vanish because a board vote goes badly. They retreat into lawsuits, anonymous sources, friendly columnists, and quiet threats. The investigation widened. Dennis Rourke flipped after his own emails surfaced. 2 executives resigned. One left the country, and discovered airports also keep records. Adrian tried to claim he had only acted on medical concern. The private hallway footage ended that defense before it learned to walk. Marin moved back into Whitaker Tower for security, but she did not return to the penthouse life people expected. She fired the chef and learned to make eggs in a pan I brought from my apartment because she claimed mine worked better. It did not. She just burned less food when she was relaxed. I did not become her employee. That surprised everyone, including her. Whitaker offered me a director title in the new Safety Integrity Division, a salary large enough to make my bank app look like it had developed a sense of humor, and an office with glass walls that made me want to throw a chair. I turned it down. Marin found me on the roof of my building that night, where I was patching a vent cover because the landlord had promised to do it in 2019. "You could have said no in person," she said. "I did, to the lawyer. He looked expensive enough to survive it." She crossed her arms against the cold. "Was the offer insulting?" "No." "Too public?" "No." "Then why?" I tightened the last screw and sat back on my heels. The skyline behind her belonged partly to her and partly to people who would never see the top of it. That was the problem with cities. Everybody looked at the same lights from different heights. "Because I don't want anyone saying you bought me," I said. "And I don't want to wonder if I let you." She was quiet. I need to build something that is mine, I said. An independent safety inspection firm. Tenant side, worker side, city contracts if I can get them. Whitaker can hire us if the rates are fair and the reports stay public. But I do not want a job because I slept in the same room as the CEO. The corner of her mouth moved. Technically, you slept very carefully on the far edge of the same bed as the CEO. Still not a credential. She laughed softly, then looked out over the city. I can accept that, she said. You can? I hate it, but I can accept it. Growth. She elbowed me. That became the shape of us. Not easy, not a fairy tale where the rich woman solved the poor man's life or the working man healed the broken heiress with soup and good intentions. We fought. We negotiated boundaries like treaties. She hated needing security. I hated needing patience. She worked too late. I answered calls from tenants at midnight. She sometimes spoke like a boardroom when she was scared. I sometimes shut down like a locked fire door when I felt cornered. But we learned. She learned that love did not mean handing someone a key to every room before she was ready. It meant telling the truth about which rooms still hurt to open. I learned that protecting a woman did not mean standing in front of her every time the world became ugly. Sometimes it meant standing beside her and keeping my mouth shut while she burned the room down herself. The sleepwalking did not disappear overnight. Real wounds rarely respect dramatic timing. Some nights, when investigations dragged up a new detail about her father or a columnist wrote another piece about the unstable Whitaker heiress, she still woke in the hall. But now there were alarms on the doors, recommended by an actual sleep specialist, and installed by me with more care than I had given my own apartment in years. There were softer lights along the floor. There was a plan written in her handwriting and taped inside her nightstand drawer. There was a doctor she trusted because she had chosen him herself. And sometimes there was me. One night in April, nearly 6 months after she first walked into my room, I woke to the gentle chime of the hallway sensor. I sat up in the guest room of the penthouse because that was where I stayed when hearings ran late and her security chief looked at me like a man daring me to argue. The door opened. Marin stood there in a navy robe, barefoot, hair loose around her shoulders. Her eyes were open. But this time they saw me. Awake? I asked. Awake. Bad dream? Not exactly. She crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed, the same way she had the first night, except now her back was straight and her hand reached for mine by choice. The final report came in, she said. I waited. They confirmed the alarm record was altered. They confirmed Adrian instructed Rourke to delay city inspection. They confirmed Dad was in the stairwell because he had received an anonymous warning. They are reopening the death investigation. Her fingers tightened. That is good, I said. It is. But she was crying. I moved over, and she leaned into me, not collapsing, not vanishing, just letting herself be held by someone who did not need her to be impressive. I thought it would feel like victory, she whispered. What does it feel like? Like I can finally be tired. So I held her while she was tired. No speeches, no promises big enough to insult the dead. Just the city beyond the windows, the hum of the air system, and her breathing slowly finding mine. A year later, my company had 12 employees, 2 vans, too many invoices, and a waiting list of tenants who wanted someone to inspect their buildings before tragedy forced the issue. Whitaker Urban Holdings became our biggest client and our most annoying one, because Marin insisted we publish every failed inspection on the same public dashboard as every past one. The board hated it. Tenants loved it. Insurance companies pretended they had invented the idea. Adrian Blackwell was indicted in June. Dennis Rourke took a deal in July. In August, the city renamed the Langford Safety Ordinance after William Whitaker. Marin attended the signing in a gray suit and spoke for 4 minutes without once looking like she might break. I stood at the back with Vince, Mrs. Alvarez, and 3 tenants from Langford who had complained before anyone listened. Afterward, reporters crowded her again. One asked whether she believed justice had been done. Marin looked past the cameras at me. Justice is not one vote or one arrest, she said. Justice is what changes after the cameras leave. Ask me in 10 years. That quote ran everywhere. She hated that. I teased her about it for a week. The night the ordinance passed, she came to my apartment instead of asking me to the penthouse. My building still smelled like old radiator heat and Mrs. Alvarez's cooking. The loose floorboard had finally been fixed, badly, by me. The spare room was empty now, except for 2 suitcases she had never taken back. I should move these, she said, standing in the doorway. Probably. They make me look indecisive. You are indecisive. She turned, offended. I run a corporation. You take 15 minutes to pick tea. Tea matters. So does closet space. She smiled, then grew quiet. Do you ever wish I had been what I said I was? She asked. Just Mara Lane, contract worker, no company, no scandal, no Adrian, no dead father in a stairwell. I thought about lying because the kind answer seemed obvious. Then I remembered who we were when we worked. Some days, I said. Her face shifted, but she did not pull away. Some days I wish I could love you without lawyers, security codes, cameras, headlines, and people making my old termination file into a symbol. Some days I miss not knowing who you were because not knowing was easier. She looked down. I took her hand. But easy is not the same as true. I don't want Mara instead of Marin. I want the woman who walked into my room by accident and chose to stay awake. Her eyes filled. That was almost romantic, she said. I was aiming lower. She laughed and stepped into me. The kiss did not feel like the movies make first kisses feel. It felt better. Less like fireworks, more like a door unlocking in a house that had survived winter. Her hands were on my chest. Mine were at her back. The city made noise outside because cities never know when to be quiet, but for once it did not matter. That night, she fell asleep in my room again. Not from terror, not from a disorder, not because a nightmare had dragged her through the hall. Because she had brushed her teeth, stolen my old fire department sweatshirt, climbed under the blanket, and informed me that my mattress was still terrible, but my presence made up for several manufacturing flaws. At 2:17 a.m., I woke by habit. The room was dark except for the streetlight through the blinds. Rain tapped lightly at the window. The radiator clicked in the corner like it always had. Marin slept beside me, one hand resting against my ribs, her breathing slow and even. For a second, I remembered the first night, the fear, the whispered warning, the woman who did not know where she was, calling me by name as if some part of her had found the only safe exit in a burning building. Then she stirred. Noah? She murmured. Yeah. Her eyes stayed closed. Am I sleepwalking? No. Good. She moved closer. I just wanted to be here. I covered her hand with mine. Then stay. Outside, the city kept its secrets a little less successfully than before. Men who had built their lives on locked rooms were learning that locks fail. Tenants were learning that reports mattered. Workers were learning that a signature from a nobody could bring down somebody if the truth lived long enough. And a woman who had once owned half the skyline slept through the night in a working man's apartment because, for the first time in years, she did not have to be watched, managed, purchased, or saved. She only had to be loved while awake. That was enough.